Hi, it's the 3 Minute Sociologist again, and today I'd like to look at stratification. Now, it turns out that sociologists spend a lot of time on stratification. It really gets their interest. Let's take a look at three things. What do we mean by stratification? How do you layer society after all? And then thirdly, what do we mean by life chances and the impact of stratification? Let's take those one by one. Well, first of all, what do we mean by stratification, and so what? You've probably been in a geography or a geology class, and you saw layers of the Earth's crust. You realize that going down through the Earth, you see these layers that, well, at least in the pictures, they look homogeneous, like everything is the same. Well, in reality, if you got up close, you'd find that most of the stuff is generally the same, but there's other stuff mixed in. You know what? That's a pretty good metaphor for a layer in society. And since stratification means making layers, it makes pretty good sense that if we can figuratively, not literally, layer people, we can make some general statements about how they act. And that's really what we care about. It's really a metaphor. In other words, social layering isn't literal, but it really is figuratively important and powerful. So, how can we stratify society? How can we determine what layers we should be looking at? Well, the reality is that layering can happen in a lot of different ways. Sociologists like to look at social class all the time, but the other side of it is that we can layer society by gender, by sexuality or sexual preference, by age, race, ethnicity. We can layer society a lot of different ways. The only precursor for layering these things is to think, well, hey, how are people different after I layer them? Can I make some sort of generalization about how they act, live, or think as a result of these layering processes? Is layering actually something that's real, or is it just sort of made up? Well, the way we find out is that we compare the layers and see if lifestyles or access to opportunity or power, if they're different by layer. If they are, then we start thinking, hey, look, society may very well be layered this way. And then let's think about stratification and life chances. Now, let's think what we're talking about here. Every individual is different. Every individual has a lot of different possibilities, probabilities, and likelihoods in his or her life. You can make a lot of choices for yourself. But the question here is, how are social differences imposed? In other words, does layering have any impact on you as an individual? Well, sociologists think it does. Not every individual will be impacted the same way, but where you are in the various layers may have some impact on your life chances. Think about that for a minute. What is a life chance? Well, it turns out that life chances are, in some respects, are like rolling dice. The point I guess I'd make is, though, however, these are not legitimate dice. Not legitimate dice. And as a result, it turns out sometimes these dice are loaded. In other words, some people have a likelihood or a greater likelihood of getting a 6, whereas others might have a likelihood of getting a 1. Part of that is not a function of being good or bad or evil, but rather a function of how society is structured. So when people in groups have these differences because of stratification with respect to social class or age or race, their likelihood of improving their lives may be in some ways detrimental. And then we start talking about moving between layers. If we can move between layers, we talk about this as social mobility. Now, you remember the concept of ascribed and achieved statuses. Some things, like gathering more education in an open class society, lets us move between layers. Other things, like gender or perhaps age, has some arbitrary impact on our ability to move. And it's pretty much a function of how that age or that gender is seen in that society at that time. Well, there wasn't much here, and it's a short one, but I hope you'll enjoy this interaction on social stratification. Onward. Thanks for your time.